starting or going back to what we did last time, very much it was about GDP. And I want to continue from there. GDP, I said there, has to do something with aggregation. So we are not looking at individual items. We are not looking at individual products. We are looking in some respect at the amount, summing the individual items up. But at the same time, it is about more. Aggregation is a process that includes something that is foregoing. Meaning in this way, it's not summing up things, just adding A plus B plus C, but it is putting A into B, B into C, and seemingly at least, A and B are disappearing. So this is important as a conceptual remark when it comes to aggregation. It is something we are actually not able to see, to view. It's not tangible in the strict sense. There is part of it, it is tangible, but it's only part of it. It is important to keep this in mind. We are by and large dealing, again, recapitulation, with GDP as C plus I plus G plus NX, which translates into consumption. And here we are talking about consumption really literally in everyday's understanding. About investment, government spending, which sometimes can be consumption, but it's a different story here. This is important as well to keep in mind, it's aggregation, it's not the individual items. And the net exports. There is something else that is hidden. It's not only about the foregoing, but it is as well about inventories. That's something especially relevant for you in accounting, where you are dealing with something that is there and at the same time it is not there, it is somewhere in the storeroom. It is produced, it is available in principal terms, but it is not immediately on the market. So if you want to use a metaphor, it's somewhere in the storeroom of the shop, but it's not on the shelves if you go there and buy something. Of course, it means that if you go there, it is not on the shelf, and we'll come back to this. The person in the shop, the salesperson, can say, hang on, wait 5 minutes, I'll get it out there. They can be built up, they can be increased, they can be reduced. And what we usually do is we talk about an equilibrium. This is important again, because we always talk about equilibria. We are talking about an equilibrium of planned aggregate expenditure, and we do so looking at constant prices. This is as well important as a kind of conceptual thing. We can say, or we can use a different terminology there, and instead of talking about the expenditure, we look at the purchase. So at the end of the day, it's very much the same. it's the money we invest, the money we spend, expenditure, or a different way of saying it is the purchases. What do we buy? Constant prices remains there as unchanged. When we talked about GDP, I said it's not a measure of wealth, of affluence. It's not a measure of what we have. So be careful with these terms of purchase and expenditure. It's not what we have, it's not the wealth we have, but it is about planned economic activities. And the planned economic activities measured at the end of these activities. We know that what we measure, looking at GDP, depends on something that had been done before, economic activities. We had to buy raw materials, putting them into the process of production, and then we go on and at some stage we sell the good for consumption. What is foregoing is not immediately visible in the figure of GDP. There is another dimension to it, and we talked about it as a matter of utility function. We are looking at goods, in a nutshell, that we can use. And we are looking at goods as commodities that we can buy on the market. We are not interested in anything else. Again, we are not interested in the wealth or in something like this, in the happiness that brings it to us, how we feel about it, but it is about what we can do with it, what it means actually in terms of a utility. There is a little bit of paradox when I say it in this way, because it is always about the individual preference. So I don't know how many people are here at this stage. Let's assume it's about 40, 50 or something, I don't know. But this means that we have 40 or 60 different utility functions. Everybody here in the room has a different understanding, a different preference when it comes to goods. Now, it can mean that half of the class has the same utility function when it comes to one good. You all like to eat your dumplings, you all like to I don't know what, to drink a special kind of tea or to go to a coffee shop now, which is more and more common. But at the same time, we look at the basket. We're looking at the overall function. And in this way, it is different. We talked about the basket, literally, the basket of goods, when we talked about GDP. And literally everybody has his or her own basket and puts different things into it. It can mean that there is an overlap, that we have one item all the same in our baskets, but at the end it is different. GDP, we talked about it, is composed from the production in different departments. So we have the means of production being produced. We have the means of consumption that are produced, so the things we use every day. And then we have the third department of finances, financial services, insurances, and all this. And then we have kind of independent services that are not linked to this, but that are important for societal and social reproduction. Childcare, education in general, healthcare, all these areas. Accounting would be a service, but it is not independent. It is linked basically to one thing in Department 1 and 2 in particular. So this is important to keep in mind, that when we talk about this aggregation, we have something that is produced in different areas. And that means as well that there are certain things not showing up. Usually, or in many cases, means of production, raw materials in particular, are not really showing up in many GDPs. Then we talked as well about the different sectors. What is the difference between departments and sectors? It's simply a different analytical approach. The sector orientation is usually it's widespread, and it's a kind of common sense orientation. The department orientation, the analysis in department, it's strictly analytical. And it refers to the end product in economic terms. And the dependence, that's important as well, the dependence between them. You would have Department 1 as means of production that allows you to produce means of consumption. The sector orientation is more or less a common sense orientation, as I said, something we produce, and it is the different sectors are independent of each other. Now, of course, it means, if you look at the sectors, it's primary retrieval and production of raw materials, including farming. Of course, we all depend in one way or another on this foodstuff, on raw materials. But this is a physical dependence, it's not the economic relationship. Secondary, transformation of raw or intermediate materials into goods. Tertiary, supplying of services to consumers and business. And then we talked about it, that is something more the future, for analytical terms, these intellectual activities and high-level decision-making, and as well this area of domestic services. It is a problem, if you want, in economics, that we usually do not know where to put domestic services. In the GDP, they usually don't show up. If you look after your parents, if you look after your children, if you do domestic work, cleaning, it's not, we talked about it, it's not showing up in the GDP. So we have this orientation, at least to have a separate sector for this, and say it is important to think about them, and it is important to have a category that allows us to classify these services as well for analytical purpose. One point is important of the entire concept or conceptualization of GDP, and this is that we are dealing with an issue of comparability. At the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to compare things. If we have a different basket coming back to this metaphor, we don't know really what to do with it. It's standing there, and it looks very much the same, possibly. Or what we see, the difference we see, is usually not relevant immediately. But we have to look for a measurement. How can we assess the different kinds of prices? Now, one way of doing it is, if you stay in the metaphor, of course, it's the weight. Take the two baskets, this is heavy, this is not so heavy, okay, that's something. But that's not for economics. And what we are interested in, or what we are looking at, is prices. GDP normally is measured per year. It's always for a certain period of time. The GDP every month is growing or decreasing or whatsoever. But usually we say it's interesting to look at it for a year's period. The GDP in 2015 is higher or lower than the GDP in 2014. So this is the stuff we are interested in, and this is something that is very simple, actually, if you think about it. So we have the two ways of assessing it. The one is the nominal GDP, which is simply the price we pay. Now, if we look at the concrete goods that we have something like a bottle of water. We go into the shop and we paid $2.50, and next year we paid $3, and that's the nominal price. That's whatever we pay. Now, it is difficult with this measurement to say, what does it say in economic activities, in terms of economic activities? Because if you look purely at the figure, it's clear, GDP is rising. We have an increase of economic activity if we look at the nominal price. But it is obvious, taking this example, if I have this bottle of water and pay $2.50 the one year and $3 the other year, nothing changed. The price changed, but not the economic activity. One bottle of water is one bottle of water. 2,000 cars are 2,000 cars. It doesn't matter whatever the price is. So we have another one, and this is the real GDP, trying to figure out some general price. And this is what we usually do, is we have a base year. Let's say not 2015 comparing with 2014, but over the period of 15 years, from 2000 to 2015. So we take the price of 2000 as base year, and then we look what happened over time, over these 15 years. And then we are coming to this economic activity.
So what is base year?
The base year is you can't use any base year. It's just your definition. You say 2000 is the base year. It's the basis, the year to which I refer. And if I want to look at the development from 2000 to 2015, there is some common sense orientation or common sense decision. Okay, I take 2000, that's where I start, and then I look how did it develop over time. I can take as well any other year, and can actually say I take 1900. and I look kind of from the perspective of 1900, what was the development from 2000 to 2015? But this is usually not what we do because it's making things too complicated. We would do this, meaning we would take the base year of 1900 when we are looking at a long-term perspective, and then we would probably look at 1900, 1910, taking decades or something like this. So, in a way, base year is simply the first year of reference, the basic year of reference. Meaning, with this concept, we have a way of comparing things. What was the situation like in 2000? What in comparison to 2015? Did we improve? Did we increase the economic activities or not? Another aspect of comparability is simply something you can calculate, namely the GDP deflator. You permanently need it, meaning you have the clearance, if you want. You clear up the two different values against each other and say it is the nominal GDP divided by the real GDP. So the price we pay and the price referring to the base year multiplied by 100.
It's just a ratio. The final result is just a ratio. I think the GDP deflator is just a ratio.
So the deflator is the relation. Basically, it's making things all the time comparable in a clearer way. So it refers to the real economic activity, not including the price, the simple price changes. Now, purchasing power, this is what this should read like, is another dimension of comparability. Meaning, what can we actually buy? Purchasing power. What can we buy for the money we have? Looking at the overall production. Everybody has a certain amount of money available, and we consider there is a certain standard price. There is a little difference between prices if we go to one shop or another, if we take the service from one company or another. But usually there is a standard price. This is the reference, and now we want to know what can we buy. Meaning, what can we buy, referring to this example, in terms of the power we have. We have then different means, but if you look at computers 20 years ago, comparing them with today's computers, I found it somewhere, I don't know where, and I don't know where I have. The tablet today has the power of a large computer about, I don't know, 30 years ago. You needed a large room for this kind of powerful computer for what you can do today with your tablet. So purchasing power means what do you actually get in terms of the quality of the goods you have. just a little excursus on the standard price. I'm still being excited by this. That happened yesterday evening. I just wanted to go home after this terrible flight. And there was at the guy in the airport, my phone was out of credit, so I couldn't organize a car before, asking somebody, get a car for me. So I left at the departure gate and taxi. I said, what do you charge? How much do you charge for going here? No, it's a meeting. So I thought I end up in an ordinary taxi, but I didn't. Anyway, I went with him, and then he said here, he actually got a little gadget on his phone, a meter, saying 950. I said, you are joking, 950. You get 150 maximum. That's a good price. Usually when I pay 150, it's already the higher level. No, and actually two guys, I was a little bit scared. You pay 950, and they showed me what kind of car it was. I said 150. No, I said 150 or police. Okay, that was the solution, because it's apparently not illegal service what they do. But okay, if you don't have this reference price of 150 is somewhat okay. Then you don't know. Then they can charge you whatever they want. If you know some reference price, comparing prices, you know what you should pay. Of course, if you are ending up there as tourist or whatever, first time, you don't have any idea what the price is from the airport to university. And then, of course, you don't dare to say anything else. It's not just these Chinese guys. I have had it in Italy, wherever you go. Taxi drivers or drivers of this kind are very common. Purchase power, meaning what do you get for this and that kind of money as matter of goods, as matter of services. And of course this is as well very much a historical thing that changes over time. As I said, a computer was the performance of a computer was much lower when it goes a couple of years back. Again, purchasing power. Now looking at the economic dimension of the formula, the value of a currency as expression of goods and services that can be bought by 1 unit. Meaning you have 1 unit, that's the money we are talking about, and then the question of what can we buy for it. So you have all these data there. S is the exchange rate of two currencies. And this is why it is important for comparability as well, meaning what can you buy in one country for 100 yuan, and what do you have to pay for the same item if you buy it in another country. We talked about the Big Mac index. This is basically here the story. So we are looking at a comparison, not in terms of time, but at one point in time. And there we are looking at comparing two different countries. Again, this can be something very easy, very simple, namely something that refers to comparing two products. But of course, this is usually not what we do. If we talk about countries, we have many different products that are produced, that are going into the GDP. And this is why it is important to really understand this concept of aggregation. Because if we have concrete products, of course we can compare them. As soon as we have more general products, food, raw material, means of transport, it is not as easy anymore. So it makes a difference of having a car or a bike. So this is important, and then we have the two currencies, linking the exchange rate to the price we pay in different countries. You can imagine when it comes to a global scale, it is a complex calculation. It makes sense. I don't want to contest that it is a meaningful figure, but it is a meaningful figure only if we have in mind, if we keep in mind all these limitations. It's not wealth, and it is an aggregate figure. This is important at this stage in particular. Then another dimension of comparability, it is the capability. It's about what can we do actually with the goods we have. Referring again to computers, to information technology, what we can do with them today is much different, and it's much more than what we could do 10 years, 20 years ago. It is important to keep this in mind, that as well it means for us as users, as consumers, that we are confronted with different ways of life. It's somewhat funny if the first time I came across it was actually when I went to the baker's shop and bought some rolls. And this person was not able, and I don't blame her for this, she was not able to calculate three figures, to add three figures. It was different rolls, different prices, and to add them, she was using the calculator. Because this is what we have today. We are so used to these gadgets that we lose at the same time a certain capability to just add 25 plus 27 plus 31. Which is? Anybody has the result? Okay. So it is something we are used to, and we kind of the capabilities of what we buy means as well it shapes the way we live, we are dealing with different things. I think, I'm not sure that I quoted Amartya Sen already with the sentence, opportunity freedom cannot be sensibly judged merely in terms of possession of commodities, but must take note of the opportunity of doing things and achieving results one has reason to value. So you see again, and it is important, and too often we forget about it. It is about things we value, utility function. It is different from person to person. And this means as well that we are looking at not just possessing something, but possessing something that is useful, that is meaningful for us. Meaningful, that has a meaning. But it is not the commodity as such that has meaning, at least in general terms. In philosophy, that's a different thing, as we talk about alienation and stuff. But it is meaningful to do something that we want to do. If you look at means of transport, you can easily compare a bike and a car. both means of transport, both means of getting from A to B. But at the same time, the transport is one thing, another thing is the distance. If I have to go 200 miles with a bike, it's a little bit problematic, or I need at least much time. If I move around in the city, I may be better off with a bike. And it is as well something where I may have another value linked to it, meaning I want to show off having a fancy car, or I may want to do my exercise. A bike is definitely more valuable for me than a car. So it is different in this respect. It depends on the different meaning any product has for the person who buys it. Again, in a comparative perspective, this is important in two respects. A, in respect of individuals. What is the purpose of individuals? What is the utility of individuals? What do they want to do with it? This may be different from person one to person two. The other is the international perspective. In some countries, at least during the summer, you don't need heating. As far as I understood, in Cuba you never need heating, you only need air conditioning. So this is a different way of seeing it as well in a comparative perspective, or that's where it's relevant. It is not just enough to produce and produce to produce the same goods, but it is relevant to see what can people do with it. Meaning, if you are looking at the question of different countries, different regions, it's as well thinking about the terms of what is the utility function for people living in different countries, different regions. There's a huge problem in economics when it comes to these questions of countries with a high level of poverty. Now I'm just wondering about not poverty, but time wealth and time poverty. What? I didn't hear anything, but my clock shows there is a break.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So that's a problem then with my clock. So it is a question in particular relevant when it comes to comparison of wealth standards, actually poverty, wealth in different countries. Of course it is a problem if we look at countries with an extremely low income. That's without doubt. But at the same time, if you have in place these mechanisms of family support, they at least take some of the hardship that you would have in countries where everything depends on commodity consumption. This is important on a global scale, but it is as well important on a national scale. When you look at the meaning, and you remember what I quoted from Polanyi, we have commodity production, we have gain orientation, but at the same time we have different mechanisms in place that are still making it possible actually to live up to certain standards. It does not mean we should neglect the need for increasing production of goods. It does not mean that income doesn't play a role, but it does mean that we have to look at what it means for people.